Hey there, friends, and welcome into Texans Live, the 2020 Draft Edition. My name is Drew Doherty. I'm very happy to be with my good pals, my co-workers, my teammates, Mark Vandermeer, the voice of the Houston Texans, John Harris, of course, the sideline reporter and of Texans Radio, and DP Sidhu, the great DP Sidhu of HoustonTexans.com, Houston Texans Radio, and Texans TV. Guys, this is going to be a fun show because we're going to hear from some of the draft picks. The four of us are going to break everything down and talk about what we saw the Texans do in this draft, and there's a few other wrinkles thrown in. But we want to remind folks about Draft-a-thon and the big success that it's been so far in the COVID-19 relief efforts. Texans have been a big part of that, and over $100 million has been raised globally for this effort, and we really appreciate everyone that's given, everyone that will give, and everybody that's given right now. But guys, without further ado, let's get into what has gone on. Forest for the trees, and I'll start with you, Mark. What do you think of this five-man draft class for the Houston Texans?
Well, they address need, I think, Drew. And, when you talk to any member of a football organization, always the conversation around a draft centers around what do you need, best athlete available versus what you really need. I think they took care of a lot of different things here. And to get Ross Blacklock, I thought was really terrific at the 40th pick because a lot of people had him rated as a first-round talent. He was ranked higher on the Harris 100, I believe. That's a plus right there. Houstonian, that's just an added bonus. But then you go down the line and you see that Jonathan Granard can add to your pass rush. I even like Isaiah Coulter, the receiver, the last pick they had out of URI, just as a guy who could possibly do something. Receiver's a very deep position right now. And I love John Reed, the corner from Penn State. I think that this is a guy who can surprise some people as a slot corner. Charlie Heck, the offensive lineman, I liken him to more of a backup quarterback. Like, we don't really want to see him at tackle. You'd rather see Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil do their thing. But just in case, he could add to the insurance, add to the depth, and maybe be a sixth man. So I thought they took care of a lot of stuff, and I thought the UDFAs, undrafted free agents, pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, and we're going to get into each of the picks basically throughout this show. And DP, you and I have talked both on air and off air about five guys in this class. It's a smaller class. It's a quality class, but it's kind of at a premium this year because of everything going on. You have less youngsters having to learn this offense, this defense, and be a part of this football team, don't you?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what Bill O'Brien said just a few weeks ago before the draft. It's an unusual offseason. Everything's going to be done virtually, and it's really going to be a veterans year, if anything. It's going to be really hard for rookies to come in and learn. It's hard for rookies anyway with that learning curve that they have their first year, but especially so this year because they're not going to get the typical OTAs and the on-field work that they're normally getting this time of year. All their instruction is going to be done via Zoom, via online learning, and Discord, I guess, is another program that Bill O'Brien mentioned. So it's really going to depend on how well they learn virtually and if they can apply that when they do show up. So I'm not surprised it's a smaller class. Bill O'Brien said we may not even get to 90 players on the roster when it's all said and done. And I think they did that because they value the veterans they have this year, and they want the rookie class to really be quality rookies that can learn in the circumstance that we have with this COVID-19 pandemic.
And Johnny, Bill O'Brien stays on brand with who he's been as a general manager through these first 9-10 months, didn't he? He made 3 draft day trades. He moved up, he moved back. He got some stuff for next year. But what did you think of his maneuvering and his sort of strategy this year in the 2020 NFL draft as a GM?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's done that from the moment he took the seat, basically. I mean, you think about what happened at the end of the preseason last year, heading into the season with all the trades, the Tunsil trade, the Clowney trade, Kia Crossan trade, trading for Carlos Hyde. I mean, during Duke Johnson a couple weeks later, and then Gary Conley. I mean, I think he has managed that part of it very, very well. And then draft night, there was some talk about, hey, at number 40, can you want to move out of that? But once you saw the board lay out the way that it did, I sort of felt like there's still some first round talent sitting on this board that you can grab right here at 40, and maybe with your other picks, maybe you start managing it that way. But man, there's some first round talent on the board. I had Ross Blacklock at number 21 on my Harris 100. So I felt like, man, you sit right here, you're going to get first round talent at number 40. So just let the board speak to you, and it did. And then he was able to maneuver later and move fourth round. I mean, we were doing the radio show at the time, and he had moved off. They moved off of 111, and so we were just kind of chit-chatting in between segments and talking about different things during segments. And I look up and I'm like, wait, we're back on the clock in 126. What do we do? You know, so it was kind of happening fast and furious, but I think they did a really nice job. And I know this is going to sound weird, but I love the fact that they were able to spin a 7th rounder this year for a 6th rounder next year, when hopefully you'll have more of a true to life draft offseason, that you're not going to be doing the Zoom interviews, that you're not going to be doing all these different things, that you'll have a true draft offseason so you can have these players in the building. And so maybe that player they pick with the 6th round next year, they can be one of their 30 visits that can come on campus and do some of those things. So maybe when you go through a little bit more of a normal process, maybe next year you'll have guys, and maybe you wanted more picks next year because of that reason, that you'll have more opportunity to spend with some of these guys before you draft them. But that said, I think these are 5 salt of the earth young men that are coming here to be professionals. And I think that was one of the things that they wanted to make sure they had throughout this draft, were guys that they could rely on because of all the different unknowns that are going into this 2020 season.
Nice backdrop, by the way. I love the Greenbrier, West Virginia. You mentioned the first round talent that you got in the 2nd round with Ross Blacklock. Well, here's a reason why, or some reasons why, the Texans saw some of that.
With the 40th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select Ross Blacklock.
Ross Blacklock there for the sack.
Nowhere to go. Ross Blacklock, first one to get there. TCU, Ross Blacklock with the sack.
And gets drilled for a loss by Blacklock.
Ross Blacklock on the field for the Horned Frogs of TCU. And before that, he played at Elkins, and he was watching the draft with his family in Missouri City. So he's a local guy. His father played for the Harlem Globetrotters. His number's been retired at the University of Texas before that, because he played for the Horns on their basketball team in the 70s. So he's got the bloodline. He's got the lineage. He's got a very interesting backstory. But guys, I'll start with you, DP. Ross Blacklock, very, very fascinating prospect, both on and off the field.
Yeah, I think Johnny can speak to it more specifically, but just the raw talent that he has. It seemed like a lot of analysts were very high on him as a pick to go late in the 1st round. And, you know, even he said so himself. He was kind of expecting to go in the 1st round, maybe early 2nd, but when it was the 281 number calling, that more than made up for it, because he gets to stay at home and he gets to play for his hometown team. But I'm excited to see what he can do. As Mark said, this team has been put together for need. And after losing DJ Reader in free agency, the Texans definitely needed an interior defensive lineman. And I think Ross Blacklock's going to come in and learn very nicely with J.J. Watt and Brandon Dunn, and Anthony Weaver now as defensive coordinator.
Certainly a lot to learn, guys, but there's a really good chance he plays pretty soon. What are your thoughts on that, without having a chance to look at him in a Texans uniform just yet? But he's picked very high. He's the first pick of this year's draft. Odds are he's going to play soon, right?
Look, I like the fact that he could be part of a rotation, because even before they drafted Ross Blacklock, I felt like, hey, I know you lost DJ Reader, but Brandon Dunn started 10 games the year before last. And you have other guys up front as well. J.J. Watt, Charles Omenihu. You still have Carlos Watkins on the roster. You have other players who can, Angelo Blackson, how could we forget him? So you have other players who can rotate in, Jernigan when he gets here. So you do have some options there. And I think Blacklock could be part of a rotation and maybe pay some dividends right away. We'll see how they shake out that playing time. But you're rarely in base anyway. But look, he's the 40th overall pick in this draft. They drafted him for a reason. They think he can play. Let's see how long it takes him to get a big chunk of playing time.
I think and I know DP wasn't doing this, but if you think about this, and a lot of people will try and do this with Brandon Cooks replacing DeAndre Hopkins, and they'll think about DJ Reader and Ross Blacklock's coming in for DJ Reader. They couldn't be more opposite. Ross Blacklock is maybe a shade under 300 pounds. DJ was definitely heavier. Ross Blacklock is going to create a lot of mayhem up the field. He is a penetrating guy. He is quick. He is explosive up the field. DJ could sit there and hold blocks and really do a great job in the run game because he could tie up a bunch of blockers. Ross is going to go get in the backfield and make things happen. And I think that explosiveness is a little different than what the Texans have had maybe the last few years. But when you put those skills in combination with Dunny, with Blackson, with JJ, with Chuck, there's a lot of different things you can do. So I do think they want to get to a point where they can move guys in and out of the lineup and give an opposing offense different looks. But most importantly, they want to be able to get after the passer from the inside. And if you think about the best defensive play in all of 2019, Charles Menu, who had that against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 6, inside pass rush, beating the center, to get to Patrick Mahomes, creating a fumble. That's the kind of thing they want to be able to do on a consistent basis. And I think Ross Blacklock will help them do that.
Yes, they will. Yes, he will. And they want to get after the passer from the outside too. And to that end, they took Jonathan Granard, a pass rusher out of the University of Florida. He led the SEC in sacks last year, 9.5 of them. And he had started before that at the University of Louisville. Got his undergraduate degree, transferred down south to Gainesville. And he's 18 hours shy now of an MBA. But he got a chance to talk with you guys via Zoom after the draft. And this is what went down.
He's joining us. Big smile. Jonathan Granard, linebacker, Houston Texans. Jonathan, welcome to Houston. How did it feel to get selected here in the 3rd round?
Man, it's been a long journey, long time coming. It's a blessing, just to even be considered at this point. I'm just ready to get to work, honestly.
Where are you riding this one out tonight, and what was the anticipation like before you heard your name called?
Yeah, I'm back at home, and I'm in Hiram, Georgia, about 30 minutes north of Atlanta. But, my family, and I got my girlfriend, her family as well. I got my friends who's from college as well, high school. Obviously within the rules of, this coronavirus thing. But just waiting until, this whole thing was unfolding. We knew that this time would come. We just had to just be patient, seeing other guys go in front. But we couldn't worry about that. We had to control the controllable. So I had a good feeling about Houston when I see the name come up. And next thing you know, the phone started ringing. So to even be considered with the greats, obviously with J.J. Watt, Whitney Mercer's guys of that sort. I'm just ready to soak up all the knowledge and get to work.
Jonathan, you can thank me because I was the first person that you met from the Houston Texans when you and I talked at the Senior Bowl. And I was really excited to talk to you. And I was really hoping that we were going to be able to make this pick of you. And I've gone through and watched a bunch of your tape. Your game against Missouri is fantastic. But for people that haven't had a chance to watch you play specifically, what is it that makes you the type of player that you are? What are your biggest strengths, and what can Texans fans look forward to seeing?
Right. My game film study and my natural instincts and having a knack for the ball is one thing that you'll notice. I'm always around the ball. I'm always in the film at the last second, whether I'm making a play or I'm getting to the ball. But I'm not a one-trick pony. I can drop, I can rush, I can stop the run. Obviously, I'm leading the SEC in both sacks and TFLs. Those are things that I really truly pride myself on, is stopping the run so I can earn the right to rush the passer. So, and this team has guys full of, like I mentioned, Whitney Mercer and J.J. Watt, guys who know how to stop the run and also rush the passer, are guys who excel in this league, and I feel like I can be a part of that.
Jay, you've been a guy that has had success at two different institutions, obviously, but there's some adversity in between, transferring, broke your wrist, I believe is what it was, fight. So there's adversity involved in that, man. Talk a little bit about your journey and how it's prepared you for the NFL and for the Texans.
Yeah, man, it's not going to stop. I've been fighting adversity all my life. Being only 185 pounds, playing DN in high school to, gaining weight, and obviously thinking people I couldn't have ditched 25 my senior year. So just fighting through that, people telling you not going to be anything, going to college, not lasting in college, to, getting hurt in 2018 when I dislocated my wrist, missing the entire season. I never had missed any time like that before, not knowing if my wrist will ever be back the same, if plays, anything, stuff like that. But I just stayed the course, and I just kept my head down and just kept working. I just understood it, and I know my upbringing. And once I seen that, if I continue to work, good things will come to me. And I just think just a true testament of all my hard work.
You brought up what we're all going through right now with coronavirus, with sheltering in place. And it's got to be really tough as an athlete, especially one who wants to get employed in this league, to stay in shape, be ready, not being able to do a lot of the things that you were told would happen being a potential rookie in this league. But here you are right now. What has it been like living through the lockdown, getting to this moment?
It's been difficult, but I just use the resources I got. Just being using my a little bit, having a little ingenuity in myself, just to continue to just work. I'm in the country, so I find things to work out, and I'll run around, push trucks, I have a little bit of dumbbells, so I try to make as most as I can with what I got.
All right, Jonathan. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Good luck and congratulations. We'll see you here soon enough.
Yes, sir.
Jonathan Granard, a very impressive young man coming to the Houston Texans, and he was very impressive on the field. You saw those plays. We heard from Tyler Suddarth. He's one of the I don't know, Steven Spielberg's, Martin Scorsese's that puts all the Texans TV content together. And he said when he was editing all that video of Granard, he got jacked up and he was amped up. And I can see why. He made plays in the greatest conference in the land. And DP, this guy coming off the edge is going to just add to things out there with Whitney Merciless and Jacob Martin and Duke Ejiofor.
Yeah, you know, they always say you can never have too many pass rushers on a team. And he's coming off a hot 2019. You mentioned the 9.5 sacks leading the SEC, his first team all SEC, 15.5 tackles for loss. And seeing the types of quarterbacks that are coming out here in the AFC, you definitely want more guys that can get after the quarterback. So I'm as excited too, seeing his highlights. And I think the Texans, that was one thing they headed into the offseason. They knew they wanted to beef up their defense, their front seven a little bit, get some more pass rushers. They've got an arsenal of linebackers back there, but it'd be great to have him in the rotation too. And the sooner he can slide into the field, into the lineup, the better for them.
Yeah, he's been a beast on the field for sure. And Mark, off the field, when he was in junior high, he was basically trying out for an American Idol type of competition so he can sing. So I know you like that because you're always strumming the guitar and singing songs as well. We heard the COVID-19 song that you and DP came up with. But this is a well-rounded guy, and we've heard from John Harris about how he's got a toolbox of pass rush moves. Everything you hear about him off the field and everything we've seen of him on the field really makes this a perfect fit for what Bill O'Brien and Jack Easterby are trying to put together as far as locker room culture and product on field, right?
Well, that's a theme throughout this draft class is how these guys are off the field and on the field, what kind of people they are, what kind of football passion do they have. They love football. They're all about football. They're good guys. They might have some other interests, but football is clearly number one. And I know we'll get to John Reed in a moment. He's really interesting as well. But yeah, Granard has artistic talent. And something DP referred to, I think, is huge here. He spends a lot of time in the opposing backfield. That's what you want, somebody on the edge, obviously. But in the SEC, I love the fact that he transferred from Louisville to Florida, and he did it in the SEC where they had 15 players drafted in the first round. He wasn't a first rounder, but it shows you what kind of competition he's up against every single week, and he made hay doing that. And I think that, you know, I don't want to talk chip on the shoulder. That's very cliche, but he clearly has drive. He wants to be great, and you want to see that. It sounds cliche, but not all of them have that. They're all drafted right now. They all got to get better. They all have to take their game to another level. Joe Burrow has to take his game to another level. And I think Granard has the psychological profile as well as the physical tools to do it.
It's a great point you make about the chip on the shoulder because he led the SEC in sacks. So you got to think at least part of his mind is thinking, hey, I led the best conference in the nation in sacks. Why did I go this late in the draft? And John, I got to brag on you. You called this while you were on the air. You said this guy, it keeps creeping closer and closer to the Texans. He could be the guy. He would be the guy eventually. But you've got Florida connections. You've got Gator connections. This is just a nice marriage. But what about that aspect that Mark brings up, the chip on the shoulder and the wanting to prove himself?
Oh, I think that'll be there for him. The one thing that I found out about John Granard when I met him and interviewed him at the Senior Bowl well before I knew the Texans were going to end up drafting him, I just saw a guy that when I watched him on the field, he was interesting because when you have a college pass rusher, you know, a lot of times if they're going to make the NFL, they're just running by guys. They're not doing a whole heck of a lot. They're just going by guys. They might have one pass rush move, and that's their pet move. And that's the way they go. When I watched Granard, he was doing a lot of different ways. Inside, outside, spin moves. He just did a lot of different things. And when I talked to him about that, the Senior Bowl, and he really prided himself on being different than other guys. That he said, look, I'm not the greatest athlete. He said, but I love pass rushing because there's an art and a science to it. And trying to mix those two to become a really good pass rusher, he loved it. He loved trying to learn more about being a better pass rusher. And I think Whitney Merciless as a mentor is going to be a perfect fit for him because that's kind of the way I look at Whit. I don't know if I would say Whit is the best athlete ever, but Whit is so smart about how he rushes offensive tackles. I think that will really help John Granard down the road. And Granard will one day pay that off when he is a long-time vet in the NFL, hopefully.
Yeah, that would be nice. I'd like that. All right. So the Texans went defense with those first two picks, and then their third selection, they switched things up. They went with an offensive tackle. Charlie Heck And Bill O'Brien spoke a little bit about the newest Texan on the O-line.
Great guy, really smart, works hard. You know, obviously his dad is a coach, and you know, we were thrilled to be able to go up there and get him. We made a couple moves today that we were happy with, and that was one. We were able to go up there and get a guy that we really targeted and we liked at that spot.
All right, John, let's get a Reader's Digest version of where he fits in, heck, to this current offensive line mix.
He's definitely a tackle. There's no question about it. At nearly 6'8" and 311 pounds, long arms. I mean, he looks the part of an offensive tackle. In 2018, he played right tackle in Carolina. 2019, he played left tackle. And to Mark's point earlier, talking about him, he's the kind of guy that you hope with Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil, that those are your two guys, that Charlie ends up being a guy that you can groom. We've had issues with the tackle staying healthy. And because of that, we've had to have a third tackle go in, a fourth tackle go in. Well, if you've got a guy that has a father as a coach, who Andy Heck coaches for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's been raised that way. He's been well coached at North Carolina with Larry Fedora and then Mac Brown his senior year. I think you can trust him to go in and do what he is supposed to do. So from that perspective, I think Charlie Heck's going to fit in fine and at tackle. And I think that's the role that he's going to play. You'll have Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard for a long time, hopefully. And then you'll have Charlie Heck right there with them. That if something happens, he becomes our Dennis Kelly, if you will. Dennis Kelly plays tackle for the Tennessee Titans. They rely on him a lot. And hopefully that's what Charlie Heck becomes for us.
Yeah, and Mark, we were all a lot younger in 1988, but I remember his dad when he was a co-captain for the Fighting Irish, that team that won that national championship under Lou Holtz. Having that in the family, like John mentioned, Heck, his dad is now the offensive line coach with the Kansas City Chiefs. Having that in the family is just a nice kind of comfort to have if you're Bill O'Brien, isn't it?
Wait, why do you come to me when you need like an old guy reference or
guy,
things
man.
from days gone by? But yeah, you know, the Notre Dame thing, look, if it's in the family, that's a good thing, right? You've seen the routine, you know what it takes. This is incredible. I mentioned before about how everyone needs to take their game to another level. Being a pro, all that it takes on a day in, day out basis. I interviewed Brandon Cooks today. He talked about what he learned from Drew Brees and Tom Brady, the process. Well, Charlie Heck knows what the process is. And a lot of these guys know it. I mean, they all know it really well in college. It's another deal right now. And that's why this offseason is so interesting. And being able to hit the ground running is so important. They feel like every one of the members of this class has the ability to hit the ground running, so to speak, and be ready for whenever we really get going with training camp.
Yeah, and after that Heck pick, the Texans went with Penn State cornerback John Reed. He's really smart. He's already got his data sciences degree. He's studied computer engineering. So, DP, you've got some fun stuff to talk about with him in the years to come. But right after the pick happened of Reed, Texans radio had this to say about him in the secondary.
The 141st overall pick, Bill O'Brien, going back to his roots a little bit, just in terms of former employers. Penn State cornerback John Reed is the newest Houston Texan. So, Seth, you talked about it a moment ago, that you can never have too many defensive backs, and the Texans go into the secondary and they go with Penn State's John Reed. Johnny, what's your scouting report on John Reed out of Penn State?
Really freaking fast. I mean, this guy can smoke. I'm trying to find, I know he ran 4.49 at 194 pounds. When you see 5'11", 194, you're like, wait a second. That's a guy that can maybe play outside, but he's 4.49, and I want to say that he ran faster than that maybe in his time at Penn State. But obviously James Franklin and Bill O'Brien know each other from their time spent together, I believe, at Maryland back in early 2000s. So again, going with a guy in John Reed that's highly athletic, running at 4.49. He did 20 bench press reps, 36.5-inch vert. He's got some athletic ability. And then he ran, one of the few guys that actually did all the tests at the combine. He ran a sub 4-second short shuttle.
Oh,
that
wow.
That quickness as a DB is big.
All right, John Reed, impressive guy at cornerback and DP. When you read the tea leaves, you listen to everything that he said, everything that O'Brien said after the draft. Sounds like he's going to get his chances as a slot cornerback and as a guy that can help out on special teams initially.
Yeah, I mean, I think all rookies will be expected to help out in some fashion on special teams. And I think it kind of goes along with what Bill O'Brien was saying, that he needs guys that can get up to speed very quickly this offseason. He wants smart, dependable, tough guys. And John Reed, I mean, maybe I'm biased with an engineering degree, but of course he's smart. I even asked him, how did you balance your course workload? He did an internship in as a computer programming too one summer, and then also managed to play college football at a really high level. So he's able to balance both. He likes to push himself to the limit. He likes learning. So he'll have a lot of learning to do this offseason because everything's going to be online, and he's got to get used to a brand new playbook. But I think it bodes well for some of these younger players if they're able to learn very quickly and adapt very quickly to this defense. And hey, he's got Justin Reed, so 2 Jay Reeds are better than 1, right?
That's right. That is right. And John, who does this guy remind you of that you've seen in the NFL?
Who? John Reed?
John Reed.
Well, the first name that came to mind when I watched him was Chris Harris Jr. That was the first guy that I thought of when I was watching him.
It's a good comparison.
And yeah, I mean, just from a size comparison, I think speed comparison. Chris Harris Jr. wasn't the fastest guy come out of Kansas. In fact, he wasn't even drafted. But the way that he understood route concepts, the way that he could change up his different coverage techniques against particular players. John Reed strikes me as that kind of guy. And one thing about Chris Harris Jr. was he was ultra quick. John Reed was, I believe, one of the only players at the combine, one of not even a handful, but 4 or 5, that had a sub 4 second short shuttle and had a sub 7 second 3-cone. That's flying. And I mean, that's quick. That's why he reminded me of Chris Harris Jr.
That's a good comparison. I love it. All right. And with the 5th and final pick the Texans had, they went back on the offensive side of the ball to a position in this draft, which was really well rated, really highly regarded. The wide receiver spot, lots of them went off the board or early. Texans waited till now, and they went with Rhode Island's Isaiah Coulter. Here is what he did in college.
He's got it. Touchdown, Rhode Island.
That's Isaiah Coulter, and he'll race into the end zone with a score.
Isaiah Coulter.
That was Isaiah Coulter, another touchdown for Coulter.
All right, we only got a minute or 2 left. We got to get out of here so you guys can do some radio, Texans radio, 6 to 7 on Sports Radio 610. But very quickly, Isaiah Coulter, how soon does he play? How much of an impact does he make? And who does he kind of remind you of, Mark Vandermeer?
Well, I don't know how soon he plays. I think it's going to be very difficult at receiver. You think about the big 4, and I'm talking about the 4 veterans when you look at Cooks and Cobb and Stills and Fuller. And then you have DeAndre Carter, your return man. So I'm wondering, does one of these draft choices or undrafted free agents battle for the return spot? Because if they win it, that opens up a receiver spot. Do you keep 6? I mean, we're already talking about this stuff, which I love, by the way. I think, look, Coulter, when you watch that highlight reel, it looks like he can play. Now, I know it's FCS and everything, but it looks like he can make plays at the next level, and I'm really eager to see what he does on the practice field. I think his development is going to be really fun to watch, Johnny, because he does have some ability, it appears.
I don't think there's any question. At 6'2", 200 pounds, he ran a 4.45, and I think that was what sold everybody. And I'd watched a few days before the draft because I had mocked the tackle from Rhode Island to be drafted by the Texans in the 7th round as a guard. So I watched all 3 of them. His cousin, Aaron Parker, was on the other side. And I thought there's possibility of all 3 guys being drafted, but Coulter with that 4.45 speed really stood out. And when you see him take a slant route to the house, you're like, whoa, this guy can really, really get up and go. I don't know who I would compare him to. The first name that came to mind was Robert Woods from the Rams, played at USC. He's a little bit bigger than Woods. But I think Woods was maybe a shade faster, but that's probably the first name that came to mind when I thought about who I'd compare him to.
All right, John Harris, DP Sidhu, Mark Vandermeer, thanks so much for the time. This is a lot of fun. I can't wait to start seeing these guys on the practice field and in action. We'll see when that is, but it'll be here sooner rather than later, hopefully. But if you want to see these guys in action, make sure you're on this Houston Texans season ticket priority wait list because you got to get in to get in. So we appreciate your time. We thank you so much for watching. For the guys making this happen, like Jay McDevitt, Amanda Caffey, she's not a guy, and Tyler Marcotte, we appreciate them. We appreciate you. Go Texans.